Only 10 days left till the end of the year. I'm sure the news cycle is going to finally slow down and we can all take a break, right? About that. Oh boy. Looks like Cursor's trying to compete with GitHub. I don't even really know where to start with this one because I have too much context. I know this is kind of a meme at this point, but I've been close with Graphite for years. I'm an early investor in Cursor. I spent hours at the Cursor office just a few days ago talking about a lot of problems that I'm sure are going to come up throughout this video. I have a lot of feelings about this. The TLDR is that GitHub is fracked. The long version is going to come right after the break, but to just give you an idea, Graphite has made code review and managing all of your pull requests significantly better, and aligning with Cursor is going to set them up for a really, really bright future. Graphite has sponsored videos in the past. As you can probably guess, they are not sponsoring this one. I'm taking no money from any of these companies to cover this. They don't even know I'm doing it. Okay, Graphite kind of knows. I did a call with the CEO earlier just to get his perspective on things, and I can't wait to share all of the things we talked about right after a break from today's actual sponsor. Every once in a while, I find myself reminiscing on the old days, where filing 2 to 3 PRs in a given workday was considered really, really productive. Now, if you're filing less than 10, you're probably having a slow day, especially with all these AI tools making it easy to push more and more code. But there's a downside to this. And no, it's not just the quality of the things that we ship. It's the amount of time we're spending waiting. I've never spent such a huge portion of my life just sitting there waiting for my CI to build, for my Docker images to compile, and all these other things that are inherently happening whenever you make a new pull request. Especially if you go and make changes after, and you have to wait for the whole thing to run again. It just sucks. Thankfully, Depot's here to make it way, way better. They'll make your Docker image builds way faster and your GitHub actions, and setting it up couldn't be easier. Before we go further, I just need to make sure you understand how much faster things are. PostHog's Docker builds went from 157 minutes down to 5. That's a 30x improvement. The Mastodon builds went from 16 minutes and 30 seconds to 2 minutes and 48. That's a 6x win. They've already been adopted by tons of huge teams from PostHog to Jane to AppSmith and more. And man, the PostHog guys can't stop talking about how great their experience has been. Their build times are down by 55x, and their shipping now feels weirdly fast with Depot. Also of note is that Ben, my channel manager and also engineer and YouTuber, you've probably seen his stuff before, he has been working on rebuilding all of our internal tooling for managing sponsors, and Depot's who he chose to do all of our builds and Docker images for it. And you can see how complex Depot makes things. You specify what it runs on, which is the Depot Ubuntu image. You then use Depot build instead of Docker build, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, so complex, right? In the time this ad took, you could have made the switch. Go give them a shot now at soydev.link/depot. Before we dive in further, I should probably explain what Graphite is for those who haven't seen the previous ads or my previous coverage. Graphite is how we do our pull requests for most of the products that we build. You might be confused because you know that we use GitHub, and we do use GitHub. We use GitHub a lot, but we also use Graphite as a layer on top of GitHub to make it functional for teams of our size. We ship very fast at T3 Chat, like many PRs a day from many people. Any engineer on the team could very quickly ship like a dozen PRs. It happens all the time. And here's one for our wrapped feature that is hopefully coming up by the time this video is live, with 4,000 lines of code added and 132 removed. This is the type of PR that would traditionally just entirely break things on GitHub. And here we see this loading bar because they're going out of their way to make the UI actually usable for large pull requests like this. They also have this idea of stacking and stacked diffs, which is an essential change in how building works that they got from their history at Meta. Yeah, I probably should have mentioned that before. Most of the original Graphite team and founders are ex-Meta engineers that missed the way that things worked at Facebook when they were doing changes and wanted to try and bring the benefits to the rest of the world by building it on top of GitHub. All of this is, in its current state, a GitHub wrapper, to put it simply. They're using the GitHub APIs, your GitHub repos, your Git histories, and all of these things in order to make a much better experience on top. And a lot of legit huge companies have made the move over to Graphite because it is so much better. And man, it really is so much better. Let's scroll the code. Like here, I'm in a Firefox-based browser, which definitely makes things a little worse, but it can actually handle this gigantic pull request that adds more than a dozen files and touches many, many more. This is the type of thing that would traditionally just make GitHub collapse, and they handle it fine. The stack diffs thing in particular is really, really, really nice as well, because it means that you can file PRs on top of PRs and improve them as individual chunks, which is great when your teams are moving really fast, and I'm now 3 changes past where you're reviewing. It allows for you to move quickly without blocking based on reviews in a way that is just better when you move fast. And this made a lot of sense for these particular archetypes of teams where this was a problem. Specifically, medium plus size teams with fast moving engineers benefited greatly from Graphite's patterns. They made it way easier to solidify review for a chunk of a change because maybe I make a pull request or a stacked diff in this case that introduces a new pattern for managing features on the back end. And then when my team's reviewing, I add a new feature. And then when the team's reviewing that, I add a third one. Now, if they approve that first PR, they have some changes for the second and they approve the third, and they're all stacked on top of each other. I can just go in that middle slice, make changes. And once all three of those things in the stack are approved, I can squash the whole thing in at once. It's a way better workflow when you're moving fast. Historically, that meant that you needed engineers moving fast enough to need this. It's something I've needed for a while because my thing was shipping really fast. I'm pretty good at writing good code. I'm pretty good at code review and these other things, but my strength was always the speed at which I could make a good solution. It's something I was really proud of that is no longer that novel a thing. Lots of people can just spin up Opus 4.5 and move roughly as fast as I used to, which is really, really cool to see. In many ways, they're actually faster, which is still just mind-blowing to me. But as such, what used to be like maybe 5% of engineers would have benefited greatly from these flows, it's now much closer to 100%. At the very least, all the people who are using tools like Opus, like Cursor, that are generating way more code, adding way more features, benefit greatly from better code review processes that will allow them to approve things in chunks in ways that moves your team much faster. And I've seen the difference once we adopted Graphite at T3 Chat and at the whole ping business. It is significant and it is awesome. And when your team does actually move that fast, tools like Graphite will make it much easier to stop blocking in the review phase. The harsh reality is that it doesn't matter how fast you're shipping code if you're not able to review it fast enough. And this is where the Cursor part comes in, I think. Obviously, Cursor has been essential to this idea of shipping way faster and building way more features. You can even see it in their editor, which feels like it's slowly falling to pieces. This is why I went to their office with my team on Monday to just sit with them and complain for 2 hours straight about all of the bugs that we've been experiencing. And they've now committed to not focusing on new features for a bit and just going hardcore in bug fixing mode. Every day they've been giving my team status updates on all the bugs they fixed, all the new ones they noticed, and what they're doing about it. They're working really hard to take care of these things. And while this is meant to be a joke, let's be clear, there is some truth to the silly thing I'm about to show. I made this dumb joke earlier, but the best jokes have a little truth to them. Cursor got so buggy that they bought a code review company to fix it. Yeah, it's a funny joke because better code review tools will make it a lot easier for a company like Cursor shipping at that velocity to actually make sure the code is good before it does the next step. But also, Graphite is absurdly polished. It is such a big surface to have as few bugs as it does. Think about how many pieces exist in a view like this. Getting all of the people who are reviewing this code, getting the description of this feature, getting the stacks and the related PRs, getting all of the code and all of the languages and all of the syntax highlighting working in a view that could have hundreds of thousands of lines of code in it. These are non-trivial problems, and unlike Cursor, they're not just forking VS Code and copying the existing implementations of a lot of them. They have to build so much of this themselves from scratch. And not only have they done it, they've done it exceptionally. My experience using Graphite has always been great. Honestly, even though the stack diff stuff and their CLI and everything's incredible, just their code review platform, the website, is so far ahead of where GitHub is that I find myself going to it relatively often or just changing the GitHub review URL to a Graphite one, which will bring you there. It's great. But obviously, that's not why they're getting bought by Cursor. Nobody's buying a company for a better view on an existing product. There have been a couple things cooking at Graphite that make this alignment make so much more sense. The stack diffs thing's absolutely part of it. Pull requests are just not the right primitive for AI. Things are being built in a very different, much more iterative way than a pull request can possibly encapsulate. So stack diffs as a new model for shaping those changes makes a ton of sense. But there's other things they've been doing. You might see one of them right here in the UI, the Graphite agent. Obviously, there's a lot of effort going into trying to automate the process of reviewing code. And I've even said myself, as great as AI is at writing code, it's arguably even better at reviewing it. Because if AI makes a mistake during the review, it's not that big a deal. And if AI catches something you might not have, it is a really, really useful thing. When AI is writing code, it kind of changes that dynamic in a way that isn't as obviously inherently positive. But letting an AI agent do a code review before you make your team do it can be so, so nice. which is why we have CodeRabbit and Greptile working on this project, and also the Graphite agent and BugBot by Cursor as options too. That said, neither of those options feel particularly competitive right now. I've been saying this to the Graphite team forever and trying to not talk about it too much with the Cursor team, but I have just not found the quality of code review in either of these tools to be particularly great. And Graphite themselves have said they're not an AI company. They're a company making it easier for AI developers to review their code. They're really deeply meant to be a code review platform, a different system and a different interface, a different everything for doing code review better and more effectively. And they've killed it in that camp, but there are attempts to build agents into it, less their strong suits. And there's a very, very bright future here where an alignment between the Graphite team and the Cursor team would allow for code review agents to be much, much more tightly knit. It's my understanding that the whole conversation about an acquisition started way back when they were talking about potentially integrating the Cursor background agent into Graphite. One of the things Graphite was really striving to do was be a platform where you could use many different agents. Like you could spin up Claude Code to close an issue for you, or make a quick change to a PR, or have Codex go do something else, or the Cursor background agent tools as well. They were talking with Cursor about using their APIs to integrate this, and the conversation got deeper and deeper until they eventually realized how deep this alignment was. And also they were talking about what it would look like to share history between Cursor and Graphite. Like when I file a PR on Graphite from changes I made in Cursor, maybe you could maintain the chat history so you could see how and why I made those changes. Maybe the stack diff model could align more closely with the history within Cursor, which would make a ton of sense. It'd be really, really nice. These are all the things I was talking about with Merrill, the CEO of Graphite, when we did a call earlier about it, and he just seemed genuinely excited. He also wanted to insist that this acquisition does not mean Graphite won't support other tools in their web platform. He very much still intends to support stuff like Claude Code within Graphite. This is more meant to strategically align the business with a really strong AI partner that can keep them moving forward without having to worry about the next fundraise or being profitable or all these other things that can distract you from the mission, but also are necessary to run a successful business. By letting Cursor, and specifically Michael and crew, run the business side as he assembles this crazy team of some of the most talented people in the world to build these different pieces, it makes a ton of sense. And since the current bottleneck they're experiencing, from what I've seen, is maintaining quality when they're doing this level of shipping, having a company that's whole thing is maintaining quality and reviewing it makes so much sense. The strategic alignment here is nuts, even more so than the Supermaven acquisition, which tragically, Supermaven's no longer really being maintained. Apparently, the people who are subbed are getting it for free now. It's what I've been hearing recently. But like, I was hoping Supermaven would be maintained better. Sad to see it isn't, but also the guy who made most of it, Jacob, has been slaughtering at Cursor. He's the one responsible for almost all of the crazy tab complete stuff that makes Cursor so cool, even if you're not using the agents. And he built a lot of the Composer 1 model, which is one of the craziest code models I've ever used in my life. Like, he's very happy to be working on those problems. And I don't think this will be the same case for Graphite. It's my understanding that there was over 70 people at Graphite during this acquisition, and all of them will be staying as part of it. They'll be keeping their original office in New York, which happens to be across the street from the Cursor New York office, which is pretty cool. They will be continuing to focus almost entirely on their existing product. It's just going to be more strategically aligned with Cursor and their goals. And I really hope the result of this is a huge improvement in the quality of what we're seeing from Cursor, because they really need to get on top of stuff. If they want to prove how great Graphite is now that they're part of their team, the best way to prove it is to ship quality consistently and to no longer be shipping so many bugs. So Cursor, hi guys. I know you're watching. I know we've been talking a lot on Slack, and I appreciate y'all immensely. You now have a much stronger economic incentive to stop fucking up. Prove Graphite is great by using it to keep your shit from regressing so much. If you can actually tell the story early next year about how Graphite made it less likely that you ship bugs and helped you build a much more strong, stable, reliable platform, that's a really, really good story to tell that'll make a Graphite product a much more compelling thing for people to adopt. The incentives here are great. You just need to do it. Stop adding new bugs to my fucking editor, please. Let's see what they had to say about all of this. I have both of the blog posts from Graphite and from Cursor pulled up. This is the Cursor one. The way developers write code looks different than it did a few years ago, but reviewing those changes, merging them safely, and collaborating on them has increasingly become the bottleneck for building production-grade software. The team at Graphite has spent the past few years thinking deeply about these workflows, and they've built a code review platform used by hundreds of thousands of engineers at top-end organizations. boundary between where you write code and where you collaborate on it feels increasingly arbitrary, and there's a lot we think we can build by collapsing the distance. I absolutely agree. That reminded me of one other interesting thing. One of the changes Graphite's been working on recently is letting you mirror your repos on Graphite's infra. They have been dealing with so many problems with the GitHub API. Like 90+% of the work they do on backend is just trying to make the GitHub API usable, caching responses so things can load fast. Like they'll hit an endpoint and it just takes 30 seconds to respond and have like a 10% error rate. It's crazy what they deal with. And more, they're moving things onto the Graphite platform where they can because GitHub is slowing them down so much. If only GitHub was built on an open distributed standard or something to make this easy. Oh, yeah, Git. Cool. Case in point, Graphite is actually well positioned to be the real alternative to GitHub, both because it's so deeply integrated with GitHub that you can seamlessly work on one project across both and have every comment, every PR, every issue, everything synchronized between the two, because they do actually live on GitHub. Graphite's just an interface to it that is really well designed, really well cached, and really well built. Over time, I see a future where we just use Graphite and don't bother with the GitHub part. Maybe you initialize a Git repo on your computer for a project you're working on with Cursor, and when you hit approve, it will auto sync that to Graphite with a really small, simple manager for that repo. And now you have an interface where you can send a link to the thing you just did in your chat to a friend that can now look at it because it's hosted on Graphite. The opportunity for all of this is crazy. And the idea that you have to go make a repo on GitHub and hit the 7 to 13 different flags when you use the GitHub CLI to push, or you can just hit a button in Cursor and now this thing is available to be shared. I am so excited about the potential here. The more I think about it, the more hyped I get. Like, yeah, I know I'm an investor in Cursor and I have been shilling Graphite for 3+ years now. Obviously, I'm going to be the person who's hyped here, but also this has so much potential, guys. I am thankful this happened the same week that all of my frustration with GitHub did, because this is the happy ending in so many ways. I expect some really cool change. It's stupid, but like they have a homepage view that's useful. Here are all of the PRs that I haven't reviewed since a change was made that I'm expected to look at. Even one that I did where I got review comments that I haven't responded to. None of the comments are resolved. That's a really, imagine if GitHub's homepage was this useful. Imagine a GitHub where the engineering and product was well aligned enough to understand that they need to make their homepage this useful. I cannot fathom GitHub ever designing something this focused on productivity, because GitHub is not a productive company. GitHub doesn't ship anything real anymore. They don't know what it looks like to ship shit anymore. Graphite does, Cursor does. The alignment here is insane. Nick from one of my other favorites, Browser Company, had a really good post about this here. Cursor's going to build the new GitHub from first AI principles. Calling it now. No chance GitHub survives and stays the most popular repo host in the next 3 years. Classic innovator's dilemma, where GitHub can't move quick enough because they have too much baggage in existing customers. This isn't quite why it's happening. It's happening because the leaders at GitHub don't even fucking write code. Like, the person in charge of all of GitHub is also currently in charge of things like AI Foundry, half of Azure, and a bunch of other random Copilot shit. And he's never written code. He has no interest in writing code. How do you expect a company like GitHub to be successful for developers if they don't have leaders that care about developers, because they themselves are not? It can't happen. I know for a fact that all of the leadership at Graphite still writes code every day. I hang out with one of the co-founders all the time. Also, on that note, one more fun fact. I'll stop sneaking too many of these in. I know too much, okay? This acquisition has significantly increased the number of people at Cursor who deeply love Outer Wilds, the greatest video game ever made. If you haven't played it, don't look anything up. Just go buy it on Steam. Trust me, it's incredible. Play it for 2 hours, and if you don't like it, flame me on Twitter, and I'll respond. It's magical. There's nothing quite like it. The less you know going in, the better. Let me know if you love it as much as I do. Like, every opportunity I can to plug Outer Wilds. Not Outer Worlds, Outer Wilds. I fucked up the founding team at Graphite by making them play this when they were visiting the city and were hanging out in my apartment. Sorry, Tomas, I had to bring this up. This game hits a certain type of nerd really, really hard, and the Graphite team is that type of nerd, and as silly and arbitrary as it is, it makes me way more excited about them being part of the editor that I use every day. It's a good alignment. I'm hyped about this. Let's see what they have to say quick. I haven't even read this post yet. Obviously, theirs has a lot more detail because they're the review company, not the feature company. Makes sense. They're all to announce that Graphite has signed definitive agreement to join Cursor. This deal brings together the best-in-class tools for creating, reviewing, and merging code in the age of AI. It's funny that only one of these three things is what Cursor does. The other two are what they do at Graphite. But yeah, more of the process is owned by Graphite than Cursor, as silly as that sounds. You might spend more time in your editor, but more of the steps exist outside of the editor, and Graphite has done crazy things to improve those. Tomas, Greg, and I started building Graphite almost 5 years ago because the world's best engineering teams demanded a better code review platform. Yep. What we never expected was how dramatically tools like Cursor would transform our industry, empowering engineers to build features in hours or minutes that would have typically taken days or even weeks without AI. Previously, we were limited by how quickly we could write code, but now the bottleneck is how quickly we can review it. Yep, this part's funny because this was my experience before all of this AI stuff, and now lots of other teams are dealing with the thing I've had to deal with most of my career, which is me and my coworkers ship too fast to actually merge. And now stuff like Graphite made life much easier. And now lots more people are experiencing these problems. So we all get to enjoy Graphite together. The same way we all get to enjoy things like Convex or Terraform and these other tools that were good before AI, but now that AI and fast devs have so much overlap in how they think and work, like they prefer things to be in the code base, not in a dashboard. They prefer review processes that are faster and have tighter loops and cycles. All these things that used to only matter to top 1% and 5% devs suddenly matter to the whole industry. There are so many companies already using stuff like Graphite. They list a couple of the big ones here. Leading engineering orgs like Shopify, Snowflake, Robinhood, Figma, and Ramp have realized the age of AI demands an entirely new dev toolchain, and these companies have turned to Graphite to help them review and merge code at the new speed of creation. I also know Vercel uses them heavily too. Listening to our customers' journeys with AI adoption has helped us sharpen and refine our ultimate vision for Graphite. One integrated platform where humans and agents can create, review, and merge code changes collaboratively. A future where PRs become self-driving, where the inner and outer loops collapse into one iterative process, and where speed and quality are no longer at odds. But realizing that vision required deep integration with the tools our customers use to generate code, and naturally, Cursor was our first stop. As I mentioned before, they were talking about these integrations, both integrating different background agents into Graphite's background agent tools, as well as integrating history and sharing between Cursor and the PR review process. And that led to this crazy acquisition happening now. From our first conversation with the Cursor team, we were deeply impressed by their thoughtfulness, ambition, and craft. We quickly found that we had a lot more in common than just our largest customers and investors. We shared both a nearly identical vision for the future of software development and set of values around talent density, urgency, and craft. An acquisition wasn't on our radar. Graphite's growth curve, product, and team are stronger than ever, and the future of code review has never been more exciting. I was just hanging with these guys at the Excel office a few months ago, and I think they had just done a raise, if I recall. Can't say for sure, so I'm not leaking because I don't actually know, but it shows this was definitely not what was being planned. Funny enough, this acquisition was leaked to me from another friend at another competitor just a few days ago, and I hadn't talked to either party about it. I just assumed it was a weird one-off rumor that there was no way it was going to happen because otherwise it would have made it to me, and then it did this Friday afternoon, so here we are. But yeah, I did not think this would happen. I'm sure they didn't either, but that's how these conversations go. You hit somebody up for one thing, and you get something else entirely different. There's a joke in the VC world, which is, if you want advice, ask for money, and if you want money, ask for advice. If you want to be acquired, ask for partnerships, and if you want a partnership, ask to be acquired. Seriously, though, it's hilarious. We chose to join forces with Cursor because of the opportunity to create something phenomenal together, the end-to-end platform for building with AI. We've long dreamed of connecting the surfaces where we create, collaborate, and validate code changes, and this deal dramatically accelerates the timeline in which we can make this a reality. Now the important piece, what this means for Graphite. If this ends up being the death of Graphite, I will be the single most upset, loudest complainer about this imaginable because I really need Graphite. Cursor is the best AI IDE by far, but you can do a lot with VS Code plus Copilot, or VS Code plus using Claude Code in the terminal, or Windsurf, or I can't even in good faith say anti-gravity. But it feels like the gap between Cursor alternatives and Cursor, it's real, but it's not that big. Whereas the gap between Graphite and its competitors is I don't have any interest in using any of the competitors. I've tried a lot of them. I've certainly spent a lot of time on GitHub, and you'll pull Graphite from my cold, dead hands. I rely on it immensely for doing my job and running my company. I can somewhat trivially see myself switching IDEs. I cannot fathom switching off of Graphite. If they take it from me, there will be hell to pay. Hold me to that, chat. I need y'all to make sure we keep Graphite aligned, because if we lose them, GitHub wins, and nobody wants GitHub to win, even GitHub, judging by how they run it recently. Graphite's product and brand aren't going anywhere. Fingers crossed. We'll continue to be the place where hundreds of thousands of engineers at the world's top software companies review and merge code. The only change is that we now have far greater resources to continue to deliver an incredible product. In the coming months, you can expect us to do things like double down on our best-in-class Stack PRs platform and merge queues, ship thoughtful integrations between Cursor and Graphite to seamlessly connect local dev, background agents, and pull requests, leverage Cursor's expertise in coding models to make Graphite's AI features even more intelligent, combine the best of Graphite's AI reviewer and Cursor's bug bot into the most powerful AI reviewer on the market. Good luck there. You have some strong competition, many of which sponsor me. Even if they don't figure that out, though, if they figure out everything else for the platform side, they will still win. And then laying the foundations for an even bolder product vision, which we'll share more on soon. I think they're still figuring that part out, to be honest, but there's so much opportunity here for everybody to be aligned and work together. I'm excited. Even if this is just a team that's good at code review, shows up, helps Cursor polish their shit, and give them a process to keep them from shipping bugs constantly, this was worth it. If it ends up being a real change in the process of, I have this idea for a change, I'm going to go build the change, I'm going to put up the change for review, and then I'm going to merge the change. If they can streamline that whole process, that could be huge. I bet they'll buy Linear next. Anyways, the transaction is still subject to customary closing conditions. We anticipate closing in the next few weeks, and until then, it's business as usual. On closing, the entire Graphite team will join Cursor to continue building. Yeah. It is kind of crazy that they announced this agreement before the deal went through. Usually they wait a bit longer, but this was leaking. They wanted to get in front of the leaks. Makes sense. They have a really nice, sweet, heartfelt thank you at the end here. Really nice to see. Appreciate you a ton, Meryl and Tomas, and also Michael over at Cursor for seeing the same thing I've seen in the Graphite team forever now. I've been going out to lunch with these guys and hanging with them since 2022, if I recall. They are one of my favorite companies in the whole tech world. I am admittedly still a little scared. This is a huge change that I did not expect at all. But at the same time, I'm really excited. There's a ton of potential here. And if Graphite needs to be acquired to continue, and the acquirer isn't Microsoft using them to rebuild all of GitHub, this is the next best thing. You know what they say, if you can't beat them, kill them. And it's time for GitHub to die. I was going to film a video about all the cool GitHub alternatives recently, and Graphite was going to be one of them, but I don't even know if I can at this point because so much has changed just from here. I think that's all I have to say on this one. What a wild acquisition to end the year off with. I really hope there's no more breaking news. I'm so tired, but this is a good acquisition, and I'm curious how y'all feel. Are you scared, excited? Is this the first time you've heard of Graphite, or are you going to go move off it now that this is happening? Just let me know how y'all feel. I am actually really curious. I have so much inside information here that it's hard to just have a neutral take, so let me know what you guys are thinking, and until next time, peace nerds.